Hello friends, my name is Dr. David Litwa, and in this channel I explore the ways of ancient gnosis, early esoteric forms of Christianity, mystery cults, magic, and much more. You can find similar content on my Patreon, so see the link in the description. Today I'd like to broach an important topic about the meaning of a very mysterious but prevalent name, Yaldabaoth. We've known about this name since the days of the Church Fathers, but the name appeared on the pages of texts that were uncovered from the sands of Egypt beginning in the late 19th century. And it has always been a mystery what the name meant, even though the referent of the name, namely the lower creator of this world, was clear. It seems like even in antiquity, the meaning of the name Yaldabaoth had been forgotten. In the Nag Hammadi text called The Origin of the World, located in Codex 2.5, the author speculates on the name of Yaldabaoth, and this text, probably sometime in the 3rd century, indicates that this Gnostic know-it-all didn't know Hebrew or Aramaic, and so speculated on the name of Yaldabaoth without much scholarly success. Here's what he wrote, quote, Pistis Sophia saw him, namely Yaldabaoth, moving in the depth of the waters. She said to him, Youth, pass over here, which is interpreted Yaldabaoth, unquote. How exactly we get from youth pass over here to Yaldabaoth would be a very long tale. Suffice it to say, it is difficult, if not impossible, to find any Hebrew derivation of this phrase, youth pass over here. Although it might have existed in the mind of the author, any kind of philological rooting in Semitic languages is no longer clear. So we are essentially back to the drawing board. That drawing board stood empty for over 1,500 years, and only when scholars refamiliarized themselves with Hebrew, Aramaic, and Coptic did they begin suggesting more plausible etymologies. So, for instance, Harvey, who put out an edition of Irenaeus's Against Heresies in the mid-19th century, produced a series of long footnotes, which amounts to a commentary. And in this commentary, he speculated that Yaldabaoth meant Yah, which is a shortened form of Yahweh, God of the Fathers, or Yah Yaldabaoth. Now, this is an interesting formulation. Yah and El are good Hebrew. Da is some sort of prefix. Bahot is supposedly the plural of bohu, which is the word for confusion or chaos as it appears in Genesis. But the plural of bohu actually is never recorded, so it doesn't seem to have existed. So this is a kind of scholarly reconstruction that doesn't seem to have firm rooting in philology. Although we can imagine Yahweh is the God of the fathers, namely Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This particular phrase doesn't appear in the Hebrew text of Genesis or any other Hebrew text. A more popular explanation was invented seemingly in the early 20th century. I cite here Alistair Logan. He's not the originator of the etymology, but he does continue in that trajectory. The Semitic root here would be Yalad, which can mean father or offspring. In this case, it's offspring. Yalad Baot would mean child of chaos. But of course, this derivation runs into the same problem that the previous one did, that there is no attested use of Baot as the plural of Bohu. But in terms of its actual meaning, it does seem to make sense that Yahweh, or Yaldabaoth rather, is a child of chaos. But some have protested that, in fact, it would be better for him to be the father of chaos rather than the child. At any rate, chaos in Gnostic and Nag Hammadi literature is often a circumlocution for matter. So, yes, Yaldabaoth is Lord of matter. Is he also child of matter? No, he's actually child of wisdom. So, both philologically and logically, this popular explanation for his name falls short. Now, Gershom Shalom, the great scholar of Jewish mysticism, wrote an important article on this issue in the mid-1970s. And in this article, he went through one by one all of the possible etymologies of Yaldabaoth and did a more thorough job of what I'm doing here. So I highly recommend his article called Yaldabaoth Reconsidered. In the article itself, Sholem suggests an etymology, Yalda, here meaning father, Abaot, Abaot taken to be the same or an interchangeable way of expressing Sabaoth. And Sabaoth, as many of you know, is a character in Nag Hammadi and related literature. He famously is son of Yaldabaoth and repents and is raised up to a higher level of heaven in the origin of the world. So this is another possibility. It is certainly the case that Yaldabaoth is father of Sabaoth, but he is also father of many other powers. Sholem's idea was that Sabaoth, which also means hosts or armies, is a kind of summation of all the powers. So we might understand father of Sabaoth as father of the powers, here meaning the astral and cosmic powers, all of them, which he begets. Somewhat earlier than Sholem, in the early 20th century, Louie Ginsburg, who wrote the very famous multi-volume series Legends of the Jews, suggested somewhat offhandedly that Yaldabaoth meant progenitor of shame, here using Yalda Behut, and Behut does mean shame or disgrace, and like Sholem, he understands Yalda in the active sense, so that this is the father of shame. And this also is possible, although one might wonder if it would be better to associate Yaldabaoth himself with shame, because none of his offspring are ever called shame, although I suppose by extension one could imagine all of his creations as shameful. At any rate, in the late 20th century, Matthew Black chose to flip the sense here and say that Yaldabaoth meant son of shame, and one can raise the fact that Yaldabaoth's mother, Wisdom, did feel shame at the evil actions of her child, Yaldabaoth. But it's never said that Wisdom herself is shame, only that she is ashamed. So while this remains a possibility, logically, it does not seem all that compelling. As recently as 2012, Bernard Bark has suggested the etymology producer of armies, Yaldabaoth. This is more or less a revision of Sholom's position, but whereas Sholom understood Sabaoth as a character in Gnostic storytelling, Bark understands it as armies. It's a reference to the hosts that are often mentioned in the Hebrew Bible over which Yahweh has control. And Yaldabaoth is not the son of these armies, but their producer. And this explanation does fit logically with how he is portrayed in Gnostic literature as creating the archons by sexual reproduction. And so this also is a possibility. The explanation that I favor goes back to Robert Grant. Actually, it was a suggestion made earlier than Grant, but Grant is simply a logical placeholder and representative. He believed that Yaldabaoth was a syncopated form of 3, possibly even 4 Hebrew names for the Judean God, that is, Yahweh, abbreviated probably to Yah, El, and Sabaoth. This produced Yaldabaoth when you said it all very swiftly. Now, in English, Sabaoth with an S does not sound much like a D sound, but it goes back to the Hebrew tzada, and tzada can be transliterated with more of a dental sound, as in Sabaoth or Tabaoth. So one could, again, smushing all of these words together, say Yaldabaoth or Yaldabaoth, and get Yaldabaoth. If one is not satisfied with that explanation, one can put in Adonai, where you can get the D sound. So Yah, El, Adonai, Tzabaoth would all be switched together to produce Yaldabaoth. It is the most convincing explanation to me because it doesn't depend on etymologies in order to make sense. It's simply the 3 or 4 names of the Jewish God, all in one. So it is absolutely clear that Yaldabaoth is the Judean deity. So whatever Yaldabaoth means as a word, the referent is manifestly clear. It refers to the Lord or God, the Elohim or Yahweh, often referred to in the Hebrew Bible. And this being, instead of being conceived of as a universal Lord, is conceived of more as the angel in charge over the narrow band of land in the southern Levant that we call Israel. And it's this angel who watches and guards and protects Israel and is the leader of its armies. And it's this deity with whom Gentile Christians were not apparently willing to accept as their Lord and imagined him more as one of the local demones or demonic beings who was not the true father of Jesus. We have now come to the end of our journey. I want to thank everyone for listening and just remind everyone that I've given what I think are the most popular and plausible explanations for Yaldabaoth's name. I don't claim to be exhaustive. I encourage everyone to do further research, and if you want to journey with me on that, please join me on Patreon. Until we meet again, thank you for your time. Be well and take care.